tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about the spiritual path. What is the spiritual path? Why do some people like to take it? And what are some kind of people who don't like to take it? And kind of analyzing it from there. So first thing we should understand about spiritual path, first thing is very practical. Spiritual path, it's something very tangible. In other words, the reason that many people take a spiritual path is to gain some kind of advantage in life. In other words, it helps us achieve something. So in Sanskrit, we have this word, it's called paramgati. Param, if you've heard of the word paramount, so there's a movie picture, Paramount Pictures, and then there's a mountain, right? So paramount means the highest. And then there's this word gati. Gati means destination or goal. So really, spiritual life, a spiritual path is meant to help us or help people come to an ultimate destination, a realization. So what is religion? Like, what are people talking about religion? So religion is, in other words, it's some end conclusion. It's a final conclusive idea about what life is about, where we come from, where we're going. So this is the idea behind religion, although there's many different religions. The idea is to come to some ultimate destination, an ultimate point. So it's needless to say that all of us, despite all of our differences, actually we share more things in common than we even realize. We all eating, we're all sleeping, we're pretty much having a similar experience. You know, the sun's coming up, sun's setting, we have to sleep, we have to eat. So in many ways, being in this universe, this material universe, we're so very connected. Actually, we're having the same experience. We're all sleeping on the same planet every day. And we all use the same sunlight every day. So there's not that much difference as far as our situation. So the funny thing about Western culture, modern culture, is it's like the U.S. Army. Actually, what was their motto before? It was be all that you can be. And then times changed. Time changed. People's attitude changed. So then what's their new motto? Army of One. So they have this motto, Army of One. It's to reflect that reflects something very important. People are more individualistic. They want more individual kind of recognition for their identity, and that's something very important to note. But although that is true, that's a trend. Again, looking objectively at life, there's actually universal principles. So universal principles mean things that we all share in common. Gravity, sunlight, things, the body, it grows old, it dies. So each person has, in other words, we're implicated simply by being alive. We're implicated by so many different laws and rules, isn't it? So it's really funny that in the culture of freedom of expression and all these things, in this culture, if somebody tries to take your rights from you, or somebody tries to limit you, then you can take them to court. That's very common. Or you can, in other words, you become very upset, don't you, when somebody tries to limit you, isn't it? If somebody tries to impose something over you. Nobody likes to be controlled by anything or anyone. But still, that's the thing that we never really question, is that just by being alive, there's so many imposed energies upon us. Again, I may not like to get old, or my body, could have a disease in some time. Every one of us, there's this potential. So there's different things that we cannot change. Once I went to a festival called The Burning Man. How many people has been to it or heard of it? We know how it. So I went in 2000. I went many times. I used to live very close to there, so I used to go a lot. But last time I went was 2007, and I had a very beautiful realization. Actually, it's very hot out there. It's very dry. You won't find a fly, you won't find a bug, hardly, because nothing alive can exist out there. It's just a dry lake bed. It's barren. There's nothing really that grows. So you're out there, and then there's dust storms like 100 miles. So there's all kinds of physical difficulties. And once I was there, I had this big realization. It just popped in my head. Somebody was handing out a bunch of water, right? They're like, free water, and everyone was like, oh, thank you, because we were like, drenched. And one girl's like, I love water. I just love water. It's so wonderful, isn't it? Drinking it, appreciating the water. So it's something just dawned on me. I was like, you know what? I just saw kind of like a human attitude that really struck me, and I never really noticed before, that whether we like something or not, it's a fact. Can we live without water? No. So we can't live without water. So honestly, whether we like it or not, it exists, and it's a factor. So this really is what spiritual life is about. In other words, spiritual life is about having knowledge about the way that life functions, the way that it works, and in other words, aligning yourself with those rules. In other words, knowledge. Well, first there's it means to acquire knowledge. So there's two kinds of knowledge, basically. There's one kind of knowledge. It's how to acquire our needs, right? So we have this body, whether we like it or not. We're implicated by certain laws of physics. So, in other words, each one of us, we're forced to make certain decisions in our life. We all have to make various decisions about where we're going to live, how we're going to eat, what condition of life we're going to live in, how are we going to provide for ourselves. All these different questions, each person has to figure out how to answer, right? And that's actually what's causing a lot of people distress, is like how to get situated in life, right? A lot of people talk about that. So that's the thing. Whether we like life or not, in other words, we're implicated by these certain laws, and therefore we're forced to make very big decisions about how to survive here, how to survive in this world, and not only just survive, but be happy. So we just don't want to survive, but we actually want to be happy. So that's the purpose of acquiring knowledge. And this is a very, very important point. Knowledge, what does knowledge do? What does knowledge do for us? Why should we get knowledge? Why is knowledge good? Who can say? Anyone? Yes, sir.
It helps us make the best decisions.
Helps us make decisions. Very good. Anyone else? Offer something? Why should we get knowledge? Why should we want to know? Okay, be happier. So you mentioned this point, to make better decisions. So the point of knowledge is to be better prepared to exist in this world, isn't it? So if you know what fire does, it has certain qualities. It burns. You touch it, it burns you. So if you are aware of the quality of fire, the power of fire, you can utilize fire to cook. You can utilize fire to heat. You can utilize fire to do so many things. But if you don't know the full scope of the power of fire, you may burn down the house. You may burn your hand or whatever. So in other words, the whole purpose of knowledge is to it's to alter our behavior, actually. It's to actually help alter our behavior in a way that we don't get ourselves into difficulty, or how to deal with the difficulties of life. That's really what it is. So that's the whole purpose of knowledge. And it's a really important point. So therefore, we're existing, and different things are forced upon us. Disease, old age, so many things like this. But we should really try to understand why. and how it's going on. So are we just gonna wander aimlessly, waiting for something to happen? Is that the best course? No. We should try to make a plan. We should try to see where life's heading, like all of this. So to bring it back to the main point is the purpose of following rules is to actually allow us greater freedom and to help us experience a higher level of happiness. For example, why do we have street lights? It's a restriction.
You mean traffic lights?
Traffic lights. So we have street lights. It's a restriction, but that restriction provides us more freedom. What happens if you get in your car, there's no street light, and you're just like cruising around, and everyone's crashing into each other, and you're dead. Your freedom's gone. So your freedom, in order to have freedom, you have to follow basic rules, isn't it? So here's the thing that we don't understand in American culture. Just because our minds are like so absorbed in this movie star's, love life and, what happens, in this country, sports, or, so many. We're, in other words, and then we're trying to define ourselves as an individual, and it consumes so much of our time, and it actually keeps us from connecting with others. It's actually quite amazing. We think the more I define myself as an individual, the better I'll be able to connect with others. But it's actually because you're so absorbed in this artificial, they call it, in Sanskrit, they call it sky flowers. There's a term, sky flowers. Has anyone seen a sky flower, a flower growing in the sky? Nope, because it doesn't exist. So a sky flower is something imaginary. So really what yoga means is actually really basic. Spiritual life is really basic. It means to cut out sky flowers out of your life. Things that have no reality. In other words, the only pleasure that it gives you is that you sit back and you dream about it and you think, oh yes, I'll enjoy this. I'll enjoy this person, or I'll enjoy this place. And it doesn't really exist. So they call it sky flower. So really yoga means to cut out these sky flowers, to cut out the things that aren't real. So just like I gave that example, the girl, she's like, I love water, I love it. It's like, well, whether you love it or not, like we need it, we're dependent upon it. So that's a sky flower. It's like, in other words, people aren't able to separate reality from the false conception of self. It's very difficult. It's a very difficult thing. But that's actually what spiritual life is for. So just to wrap it up, certain people come to take a spiritual path, and there's usually 4 reasons, and they're given. It's quite interesting. The first reason is a person is in distress. So somebody is like, oh, I'm feeling anxiety, I need to meditate, I got to go to yoga, I got to do something. I need a relief, right? So that's one reason that people come to a spiritual path. The other reason is that people, they want to pray to God for financial security or for security. So it's not so much distress, but they think that they're going to achieve something higher, right? So they're going to gain. So they come for gain. In other words, they come for personal gain. Then you have a person that comes to spiritual life. He's curious. He or she's a curious person. And they want to know, is there something better than what I'm living or what I have? And then finally, the last person who comes is a person who wants knowledge, which we've been talking about. So knowledge, the person, they want to know, why do I exist? Why am I existing? Why do I have to work? Why do I have to go to school? What's the purpose of eating, sleeping, mating, defending? What's the purpose of trying to define myself? What? So he wants to know, and he wants definite answers. So it's described, out of those 4 people, the best one is that person who wants to know why. And there's reason for that. So the person who comes to a spiritual path out of distress or for material gain, what